Welcome to week 2 of the Mandala Punch-Along. Last week we ironed the template onto our cloth, and this week we'll get started on punching the mandala. First things first, let's stretch it in the hoop. So slide the inner hoop under it, and then make sure that the traced mandala is nicely in the middle of the hoop. Push the outer hoop down over it. There we go. That's looking pretty well centered. I'm just going to stretch it a bit more, pulling the cloth tight all the way around the hoop. Once it's drum tight, go ahead and tighten the screw so the cloth can't slip out anymore. And then stretch it a bit more again. This traced side of the cloth, the side with the lines visible on it, this is going to be the wrong side of your work, the back of the finished piece. And this side here without any lines will eventually be the front or the right side of the piece. We're going to start punching, and we'll begin with the innermost circle. In the pattern you'll find written instructions including what colour to use for each section, as well as what needle length to use. The number given for the needle length is the number you need to move the wheel on the tool to. First, let's thread our needle with the yarn we'll be using. So push the threader up the middle. And for this colour combination, I need to begin with colour 3. That's this colour here. And I pass it through the eye of the threader. That's step 1. And then I do the same here at the tip, inserting from the back to the front through the hole of the needle. Like that, and then I draw it through. And then, according to the pattern, we need to set the needle length to 8. So loosen the wheel and then slide it up to 8. And then we're ready to start punching. And we'll begin with the smallest circle. Now we're going to work from the outside in, inserting on the line to begin. Make sure you push it all the way through your cloth, right through to the plastic holder. The needle itself shouldn't be visible anymore. And then, using small stitches, punch the outline of the circle. So work your way all the way around. As I mentioned last time, I find it a bit easier to hold my hoop still and rotate the punch needle instead. But you do what you find easiest. You want to make sure that your yarn is able to flow freely through the back of your needle. And just like this, you carry on working around in a spiral in towards the center to fill the whole circle. You can already see that we're getting a lovely round circle here on the back, and on the front side we should have some really nice long loops. So keep checking that your working yarn is nice and loose. Unravel more if you need to. You don't want any tension in the yarn. So we've almost reached the end. Your stitches will start getting a bit smaller to fill up the last gap here in the middle. That looks good to me, so let's turn it over and check that the loops look nice and full. That looks good. Turn back to the other side and then lift up the needle. Make sure you hold the yarn securely here. We don't want to pull out the last loop. And then cut the yarn as close to your work as possible. And that's the first circle done. Turn over your work and trim the tail here, just slightly shorter than the loops around it to hide it. There we go. We've made a good start. And now let's move on to the second circle. We're going to punch the second circle from the same side as we did the first. We do need to change colour to colour 4. So my needle is now threaded and ready to go. Let me just check the pattern for what needle length to use. And it says to set it to 4. So that's a shorter needle for this section. So let me just adjust that. There we go. And we're ready to continue. And we start with the outline of the next circle. It's the same process as for the inner circle, so work from the outside inwards until it's completely filled. If after a while you're not happy with how some of your stitches look, just lift up the punch needle and carefully pull out those stitches. And then slide your needle back down the yarn until it touches the cloth, and then just redo those stitches. That way you can easily redo stitches you think are a bit too long or not in the right place. And then trim the tail on the other side as well. And that's the second section done. If you look closely, here in the middle on the front of my work, there's a slightly longer loop sticking out. It probably happened while I was punching the outer circle. Sometimes you can catch a loop as you punch through and lengthen it as you push down. And the way to fix this is to take a regular needle and gently tug on the loops immediately around the longer loop. This pulls it back down to the correct height. As you see here, if I pull on this one, the next one gets shorter, and if I pull on the shorter one, it pulls the longer one back down. And you just want to pull it until it's all the same height again. Make sure you don't pull too tightly on the loops, and if it doesn't fix the problem, just leave it. You don't want to risk pulling your loops all the way out. Just work carefully and try to level out any really obvious loops. So those loops are now looking nice and level with each other again. It's just a little trick to try if you want, but leave it if you'd rather not risk it. So next we move on to the star. Now the loops of the central circles are on the front of our work, but for the star we want the flat stitches to be visible. This means that we need to punch from the other side of the hoop, and that's this side here, the front side of the mandala. If you hold the hoop up to the light, it should be really easy to see the lines through the cloth, and you'll be able to trace over them on this side of your cloth. With that done, we're ready to punch from the front of the mandala, and we'll be using color 2. So let's thread our needle. And here too, we begin punching the star from the outside in, starting at the point. Draw the yarn tail to the other side, and then punch along the outline of the star. Make sure you punch right into the corners, like so, then up to the tip of the next point. Work right into the tips, this way you get nice clear points on your star. Here again, work into the corner itself and then out again. If you find that your cloth is getting too loose to punch smoothly, then just pull the edges to stretch it out a bit more firmly. Make sure you do so the whole way around and not just on one side. You want the mandala to stay in the center of your hoop. And then punch the next round, just as before. We're almost back at the start of the round, and this is our 4th round. So we've punched around the star, following the outline 4 times. On my one, the bottom edge of these points is now touching the inner circles. So I'm ready to fill up the points. But if that's not the case on yours, let's say the bottoms don't quite reach the inner circles, then punch again around until they do. 4 or 5 rounds should do the trick to get them really close together. I'm now going to fill each point separately. So I punch in towards the middle, punching right into the tip, and then back out again. Punch into that corner as well, and then back to the middle on the other side. Okay, again, punch into the tip here. You might need to push your loops out the way a bit with your fingers so you can see where you're going. And then back up again, and slowly fill in the space with smaller and smaller stitches. So just a bit more. And that's complete. And so now we work across to the next point, punching along the base of this filled in area. And then we punch up to the next point. And then gradually fill it in as you did the first one. You use a finger or a thumb to hold the loops out of your way so you can see better. Then you can see where you're punching. And then work across to the next point, and so on in the same direction. It doesn't matter if occasionally stitches overlap each other, but continue just as we did before and fill in all the star points. Make sure you always punch right into the tips of each corner to get really clear defined lines. We've punched the whole way around now and filled in all the points, so slide the needle up and cut your yarn. And there you have it! A really nice flat embroidered area on the front of your mandala without any loops. And next week we'll move on to the big star that runs around it.